O Lord of hosts, be with us, for we have none other help in times of adversity but thee. O Lord of hosts, have mercy on us.
Babalon, the Babalon working, this has to do with some of his relationship. Let's pull this stuff up. Some of his relationship with Jack Parsons. Now, we got tons of clips here, so I don't know where exactly all of them are. We're looking for Babalon working. Here we go. Babalon working. So the Babalon working was a series of magic ceremonies and rituals performed from January to March 1946 by author, pioneer, rocket fuel scientist, and occultist Jack Parsons and Scientology founder L. Ron Hubbard. This ritual is essentially designed to manifest an individual incarnation of Babalon. Their goal was to bring forth the Antichrist. And they were very explicit about this. And later in life, L. Ron Hubbard claims that he himself was the Antichrist. Publicly, explicitly. Now, again, he says disgusting things about our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. He claims that he was a homosexual, that he was a pedophile, that he loved little boys, that he was like prone to angry outbursts. Again, you can already see the sort of satanic, demonic nature of L. Ron Hubbard. Everything that is true, again, I told you, the guy lies about everything. He's clearly a child of the father of lies, and we know who that is. But the goal of the Babalon working in these rituals was to perform sex magic and ceremonial rituals to invoke the Antichrist. This is what Jack Parsons and L. Ron Hubbard were up to. And so there is some homoerotic dimensions to it. Like Jack Parsons talks about how L. Ron Hubbard was there watching him masturbate while L. Ron Hubbard was performing the ritual of summoning certain entities and spirits during the ceremony. So people have speculated that they have actual homosexual like interactions. Most people would say no, there's no evidence to it. But based on Jack Parsons, we know that certainly he was masturbating to, again, perform some of this sex magic, and L. Ron Hubbard was right there helping and aiding in the ritual. Hubbard takes Sarah, Parsons' girlfriend. So if we read a little bit further here, almost immediately after Parsons declared that the first of the series of rituals was complete and successful, he met this, who's a Hollywood actress, Marjorie Cameron, who wanted to be the conduit for the Antichrist. So she wanted to be impregnated. She in his home and regarded her as the elemental that he and Hubbard had called through the ritual. So again, the masturbating, the sexual ritual dynamics. They got these rituals from Aleister Crowley, again, famous for his sex magic, often, again, having a homosexual nature to him. Crowley was open about being penetrated and penetrating other men. Well, L. Ron Hubbard, Jack Parsons were into this. They tried to summon a woman that they would be able to bring forth the Antichrist with. This was this Marjorie Cameron. And so soon Parsons began the next stage of the series, an attempt to conceive a child through sex magic workings. Although no child was conceived, this did not affect the result of the ritual. To that point, Parsons and Cameron, who Parsons now regarded as the Scarlet Woman of the Book of Revelation, was Babalon and called forth the ritual. He soon married her. The rituals performed drew largely upon rituals in sex magic described by English author and occult teacher Aleister Crowley. Crowley was in correspondence with Parsons during the course of the Babalon working and warned Parsons of his potential overreactions to the magic he was performing, while simultaneously deriding Parsons' work to others. So, anyways, L. Ron Hubbard, Jack Parsons had a girlfriend named Sarah. And Jack Parsons grew up from a very wealthy family. Again, for those of you who don't know, let's see. I got it somewhere. This is Jack Parsons. Yeah. So here's Jack Parsons. Again, he was famous for his as a jet propulsion, working at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, rocket engines, all this different type of stuff. And he was a notorious occultist. That's what I had down here, is that he was adhered to the occult philosophy as Thelema, which had been found in 1904 by Crowley, so on and so forth. 1945, Parsons gave a speech to the Agape Lodge, in which he attempted to explain how he felt that the book of the law could be made relevant to modern life. This is, again, quotes from Jack Parsons. The mainspring of an individual is his creative will. The will is the sum of his tendencies, his destiny, his inner truth. It is one with the force that creates or makes the birds sing and the flowers bloom, as inevitable as gravity, as implicit as a bowel movement. It informs alike atoms and men and suns. To the man who knows this will, there is no why and why not, or why not, nor can or cannot. He is. There is no known force that can turn an apple into an alley cat. There is no known force that can turn a man from his will. This is the triumph of genius that, surviving the centuries, enlightens the world. This force burns in every man. And so you can see Jack Parsons was very much into the thelemic worldview. And as I said earlier, he identified L. Ron Hubbard when there's a correspondence he has with Aleister Crowley, of which Crowley says, be careful, L. Ron Hubbard can't be trusted. Jack Parsons says L. Ron Hubbard is the most thelemic man or individual he has ever met. And why so? I think it's because his ability to just bold-faced lie to people. Well, L. Ron Hubbard actually stole Jack Parsons' girlfriend, Sarah. And again, like I said, Jack Parsons was very wealthy. He lived in this massive mansion, this almost castle. This is where they would do these magical rituals, this sex magic. And L. Ron Hubbard stole his girlfriend and also stole $35,000. This is like in the 1940s. So $35,000 went a fairly long way in the 1940s. And so Jack Parsons wrote about it. I think it was something like the double-edged sword of freedom or something of that nature, where he talked about how L. Ron Hubbard basically schnookered him, took his girlfriend, and they went to like Florida or something on a yacht. I forget. But yeah, so that's L. Ron Hubbard. And so Hubbard did a blood ritual with the goddess Hathor. Hathor is a goddess in the Egyptian pantheon. She's considered as a sort of fertility goddess, a life giver, if you will, but she also has a very vengeful side. You could argue that she's sort of like the Kali figure of the Egyptian pantheon. So Kali, if you're familiar with the South Indian deity in the Tamil culture of the tantric Hinduism, where she's standing on the chest of her husband Shiva. She's the tantric form of Shakti, the female spark or energy in the Hindu worldview. Hathor is kind of that. So you can see, again, we've talked about the Empress. We can already see that L. Ron Hubbard is totally interested in these magical understandings, in this relationship he claims to have with this entity called the Empress, which many people have speculated is tied to this blood ritual that he did with the goddess Hathor. Hubbard claimed to be the Antichrist, as I said, and that suppressive people, he claimed, have a negative animal magnetism. He gets this from Mesmer. I don't know if you guys are familiar with like mesmerism. This comes again from the 19th century, but this was an understanding of like how energies worked and all this type of stuff. Oh, I didn't see there's a super chat that came in. Shout out to Virtuoso Maximoso, throws in $5, says John Travolta's autistic son died from a seizure. Often autistic folks are treated with fiatic medication. Interesting. Yeah, I'm definitely not familiar with any of that, but thank you so much, Virtuoso Maximoso, for the super chat. I do appreciate it, brother. And so I wanted to highlight that. And then I wanted to also highlight that we're going to read a section called the affirmations of L. Ron Hubbard. So the affirmations are something that are a bit controversial. The Scientologists don't really want them to be discussed too much. They question the legitimacy of them, but now it's a fact. It's known that they are authentic. And they're a series of writings that were never supposed to become public. They're basically L. Ron Hubbard's letters to himself, writings to himself, his affirmations. And we're going to read some of them. In fact, we can just do that right now. Let's see. Where is his affirmation? I got him somewhere. Affirmation. Here we go. So the affirmations, also referred to as the admissions, is a document written around 1946 or 47. It does not list an author, but is widely believed to have been written by L. Ron Hubbard. And multiple people in the Church of Scientology have come out and said that these documents were, in fact, in the church, and so that they were authentic because L. Ron Hubbard put them there. The document consists of a series of statements by and addressed to Hubbard relating to various physical, sexual, psychological, and social issues that he was encountering in his life. After the affirmations became public knowledge in 1984, the Church of Scientology initially disputed their authenticity. However, they later effectively admitted the document's authorship, describing the legal work in papers as having been written by Hubbard and seeking to retain ownership of it. The affirmations were intended to be used as a sort of self-hypnosis. Now, this is really interesting because if you go to hypnosis in Scientology, they'll tell you that, oh my gosh, we don't do hypnosis. Hypnosis is terrible. We would never do that. But yet at the same time, we know that L. Ron Hubbard actually learned how to use like hypnosis on people. This was again through some of his relationships with magic and during that whole period in the 40s and 50s. And so publicly he would say, oh no, Scientology, we definitely do not do any forms of hypnosis at all. Never, no way. We're against all that stuff. And then we see that he himself is using affirmations for sort of self-hypnosis. And before Scientology was founded, he was also admitting to the use of hypnosis to various people. So I want to read this little section here. This is a little bit about L. Ron Hubbard in case I missed anything. L. Ron Hubbard had become a well-known writer of pulp fiction stories in the 1930s before he joined the U.S. Navy in 1941. A few months before the U.S. entered World War II, his military career was not a success by any means, although you ask a Scientologist, they'll tell you that he was a war hero of World War II. He was removed from both the vessels that he commanded after disagreements with his superiors and an incident in which he inadvertently shelled a neutral island in Mexico. He spent a lengthy spell in hospital with chronic stomach ulcers in that last year of the war, which he claims that he was blind and had a foot problem and healed himself through Dianetics, which of course wasn't true. He's a habitual liar. After the war ended in 1945, he moved in with Jack Parsons, a rocket scientist and occultist who shared a large house in Pasadena, California, with various like-minded individuals. Hubbard was an enthusiastic participant in the sex magic rituals, which Parsons, a member of Aleister Crowley's Ordo Templi Orientis, performed with the aid of his girlfriend and muse, Sarah Betty Northrup, who was 21 years old in 1945. Hubbard subsequently eloped with Sarah to Florida and eventually married her bigamously without divorcing his first wife, Polly, whom he had abandoned in Washington State, along with their young son, L. Ron Jr. So L. Ron Jr. is, L. Ron Jr. is, dang it. There he is right here. So he was called Nibs Hubbard. L. Ron, he joined and actually began working with his father, as I said, but he became quite disenfranchised with him. And this is L. Ron Hubbard's junior son, or often referred to as Nibs Hubbard, talking about that. At some point, yeah, can you imagine a guy, you leave your wife and your son, you go then to Jack Parsons' magical mansion, you steal his girlfriend, you steal $35,000, and then you marry the 21-year-old girl that you just stole from your supposed friend while you're still legally married to another woman. That, again, the dude he's sinister, man. He had no conscience. At some point around 1946 and 47, Hubbard is said to have composed what became known as the affirmations or admissions. They were written in the intention of reading them into a recording device and playing them back to himself as a form of self-hypnosis. The document came to light in 1984 court case, Church of Scientology versus Gerald Armstrong, when the Church of Scientology's former archivist, Gary Armstrong, read sections of them into the record against the strong objections of the church's lawyers. Other sections of the document were subsequently posted on the internet by Armstrong after someone anonymously emailed a copy of the affirmations to him in 2000. The name Affirmations was given to the document by Omar Verse Garrison, a British writer hired by the Church of Scientology to write an official biography of Hubbard. So here's some of the affirmations. Let's read them. I can write. My mind is still brilliant. That masturbation was no sin or crime. That I do not need to have ulcers anymore. Again, healing himself, right? That I am fortunate in losing Polly and my parents, for they never meant well by me. that I believe in my gods and spiritual things, that my magical work is powerful and effective. Interesting, right? Why would he put on a tape that he was supposed to listen to for hypnosis, say, my magical work is powerful and effective? That the numbers 5, 25, and 16 are not unlucky or evil for me. I am not bad to look upon. Now, the dude is hideous. I mean, if we look at it, and his bottom teeth are disgusting. That I'm not susceptible to colds. That Sarah is always beautiful to me. So now he's already stolen again. He's with his second wife, who he stole from Jack Parsons. That these words and commands are like fire and will sear themselves into every corner of my being, making me happy and well and confident forever. Of course, 2, your eyes are getting progressively better. They became better when you use them as an excuse to escape the Naval Academy. You have no reason to keep them bad. So this is where he claims he healed himself from being blind, right? Your stomach trouble you used to have as an excuse to keep the Navy from punishing you. You are free of the Navy. Your hip is a pose. You have a sound hip. It never hurts. Your shoulder never hurts. Your foot was an alibi. The injury is no longer needed. Testosterone blends easily with your own hormones. You have no fear of what any woman may think of your bed conduct. You know you are a master. You know they will be thrilled. You can come many times without weariness. Many women are not capable of pleasure and sex, and anything adverse they say or do has no effect upon your pleasure. Now, there's a case in which L. Ron Hubbard raped a girl, and apparently she says what happened is he like inserted his penis into her and laid on top of her for like an hour. Some people speculate it may have been part of a sex ritual that he thought he was conducting, or as we can see from the affirmations, he wasn't very good in bed. And so that he just could have been inept. I'm not sure. You have no fear if they conceive. What if they do? You do not care. Pour it into them and let fate decide. You can tell all the romantic tales you wish, but you know which ones were lies. You have enough real experience to make anecdotes forever. Stick to your true adventures. Masturbation does not injure or make insane. Your parents were in error. Everyone masturbates. You have no urge to talk about your Navy life. You do not like to talk of it. You never illustrate your point with bogus stories. It is not necessary for you to lie to be amusing and witty. You like to have your intimate friends approve of and love you for what you are. This desire to be loved does not amount to a psychosis. Okay. You will live to be 200 years old. You will make fortunes writing. You will always look young. Money will flood in upon you. So again, here's some more. You are radiant like sunlight. You can read music. You are a magnificent writer who has thrilled millions. You are a magnificent writer. Or I said that. Ability to drop into a trance state at will. Lack of necessity of following a pulp pattern. You are a psychic. You do not masturbate. So again, weird. He really obsessed with masturbating. You can do automatic writing whenever you wish. You do not care what comes out on the paper when your guardian dictates. The guardian, as I said, was the Empress figure, right? He talks about this Empress figure. You do not know anger. Your patience is infinite. Snakes are not dangerous to you. There are no snakes in the bottom of your bed. You believe implicitly in God. You have no doubt of the all-powerful. You believe your guardian perfectly. Again, the Empress. So here's just a few of the affirmations. Okay, so you guys can do with that what you will. Now, there's a little thing that I want to present here, and then we can go into the rest of our stream today that I think is quite interesting. Okay, and so this, again, I'm not gonna say who I got this from or how I came about it, but this is an interesting PowerPoint, or at least presentation, trying to show the connections of the occult with Scientology. And that people speculate, and the person who put this together. Now, I'm not arguing for it, but I think it's worthy and noteworthy to put forth for, again, the stream. that some people speculate that Scientology is being used potentially by intelligence agencies, that the CIA was working with L. Ron Hubbard, potentially intelligence. Again, people speculate that maybe L. Ron Hubbard was part of the Office of Naval Intelligence, but that Scientology, building upon occultism, again, nothing of it is true, original, other than the lies and distortions he puts into it, but that Project Bluebeam, the idea of an alien invasion that would eventually come to the world to create a new world order, a new government, a new one world structure, that Scientology was going to be a sort of catalyst for this. And that's why talking about Xenu and the Galactic Confederacy and all this stuff puts it in a place where it may then look like, actually, right now we like make fun of Xenu, but then if everybody believes Project Bluebeam, something happens, they believe that the aliens are here. They're like, oh my gosh, maybe Scientology was right. They were right the whole time. And so this is an interesting presentation highlighting some of the influences on Dianetics and Scientology of Hubbard. So we can see Crowley, the OTO, Freud, hypnosis. Again, all these, dude, what's so interesting is that we have evidence that L. Ron Hubbard joined the Order of the Rosicrucians in America. This was in the early 40s. So this was around the time with Jack Parsons. Now, Jack Parsons, again, that's the Ordo Templi Orientis, the OTO, an organization of which Crowley was a head of. And the OTO was in opposition, and they were a rival group of magic to like Heinrich Himmler and some of the German Nazis that were into the occult. So they hated Crowley because they saw him as a rival magician, interestingly enough. Now, of course, people speculate that he was like another intelligence agent for MI5 or the British government. Probably, who knows? So again, this is just highlighting all the influences, how Hubbard influenced Miscavige. So this is showing like where he got influenced and then who he influenced himself. Pantarchy, this is highlighting that Pantarchy was a plan of, so Pantarchy is a social theory proposed by Stephen Pearl Andrews in the 19th century, the American rival of Comte, so about a totalizing, all-encompassing philosophy of universology. The plan of this partly proposes a new spiritual government for the world called the Pantarchy, which includes a new church and a new state with, to use his own language, all other subordinate institutions, educational and informational, which are universal in their scope and nature, in which can be devised and established as subservient to the collective wants of mankind. By the 1860s, he was propounding an ideal society called Pantarchy, which is a society with a voluntary government strongly connected to a new Catholic Church. And a form has been moved, philosophy called universology. Okay. Some people want to highlight that there may be an interesting relationship between the centralizing structure of the Catholic Church with the papacy and how L. Ron Hubbard set up Scientology. Now, L. Ron Hubbard was certainly no friend of Christianity, and I'm going to show you guys the quotes that he had, the disgusting comments he had about Christ, just to show how satanic this guy really was. But some speculate that the hierarchy structure of Scientology was influenced, one, by his understanding of how mean, small mustache man set up the Third Reich, and how the Catholic Church set up their structure. Again, I'm not arguing that. I don't know, but I'm just putting that forward. So here's, again, a piece trying to highlight that potentially the Church of Scientology and its relationship to the Catholic Church, or at least the structure of the Catholic Church. Some people speculate that the Jesuits are part behind promoting of Scientology. Again, I'm not making that claim. I don't know if that's the truth, but certainly that's put forth. This right here, the Scientology, and IE. So Woodward McFeeters, the guy who translated, so if you see right here, translated by Woodward McFeeters, you see that? This is a German text on the signs of the constitution of usefulness of knowledge and knowing. This is about their Aryan, so the Aryan theory of Nazi Germany, written in 1934. This was translated by a Scientologist. And so I've heard people highly questioning the translation of this because the Scientologist McPherson here, or McFeeters, is trying to make it seem that this was, that L. Ron Hubbard was building upon these things. Because when he talked to the Scientologists, when somebody would highlight, hey, you got this from here, because L. Ron Hubbard claimed to be the Maitreya, the last Buddha, right? The Buddha that's going to lead us into the kingdom, the new world order, the utopia, nirvana, if you will. People would highlight, because he would say, again, we'll play. He claims that he studied like all these different men from around the world, 20 different primitive groups of men he studied. All lies. He did not. But when Scientologists would say, hey, it looks like you got this from here, he'd say, yeah, well, I got a piece of it, and now I've cleansed it because they got all this wrong around it. And so I've cleansed it and I brought it into Scientology. So the Scientologist thinks that this amalgamation of things within it by L. Ron Hubbard, they believe he took the true pieces of all these world religions and true philosophies, and Scientology is the epitome of all of them, because all the trueness of all these different traditions constitute the total construction of Scientology. So highlighting the psychology of the unconscious, where they're getting the reactive and the analytic mind and stuff like that. Looking at Edison, sort of these electrical units, you can see again an early understanding of the E meter here. Self-hypnosis, report from the readers to this regarding the self-hypnosis. Patterns or systems of mental images that make it possible to live a full, happy life. To an increasing extent, it is now possible by scientific modalities to reverse distorted mental images, patterns, and consequential, also to reverse their harmful, illness-creating effects into constructive, positive life. Does that sound a little bit like the engrams? Does that sound a little bit like his reactive mind theory? I think so. So this is talking about how everything is electrical. We see again how to achieve past life recalls, right? Because this is what they do in these auditing sessions. Look, this is L. Ron Hubbard. This is somebody else. So again, using these past life recall systems. Hypnosis and Dianetics. Again, now you talk to a Scientologist, they'd say right here, oh, the Church of Scientology officially denies that it uses hypnosis as part of its beliefs and practices. Individuals admitting to having had hypnosis are either a participant or a practitioner and not permitted to undergo training due to the possibility of harm. Yeah, wrong. Well, I'll show that to you guys here in a few. So, okay, moving along. So we see, again, talking about the messaging of extraterrestrials. We see even Ghislaine Maxwell related to some of this stuff. We see, again, this Molina guy who is an aeronautical engineer. Molina had 5 associates, including Jack Parsons, became known as the Caltech as the Suicide Squad because of their dangerous experiments and failures when testing rocket motor designs. Interesting. So there's Jack Parsons with Molina. That's Jack Parsons on the far left. Again, this Frank Molina guy. Here's Roger, is an American physicist, astronomer. Molina serves on the advisory council of METI, Messaging Extraterrestrial Intelligence, in 2011. You look at his father or grandfather here. Frank Molina, I guess it'd be his father, was an American aeronautical engineer. That's who we were reading about there. So the odd beginnings of Ron Hubbard's career, talking about his relationship with Jack Parsons and magic. A wife of Dynex founders asked for a divorce on cruelty grounds. The Sarah one, the second wife that he had, again, claims he was insane. L. Ron Hubbard kidnapped his own child, his daughter, and fled to Cuba. He fled to Cuba. His wife, he would then call his wife. This is in the Going Clear documentary. He would call his wife and tell her that he killed their child, she would be panicking, crying, and then he'd call her back a few hours later and say she was still alive. Again, just manipulating and traumatizing people. He loved it. He loved it. This is Babalon working. We talked a little bit about that already. Enochian magic, Enoch. There's Iowas from Crowley. Here's L. Ron Hubbard. Our whole activity tends to make an individual completely independent of any limitations. Aleister Crowley had some interesting things to say about this. He wrote the Book of the Law. And so it's so interesting. As I said, he promises like this complete independence and liberation through Scientology, but in reality, he's making people more and more and more dependent on him. So here we see then the Master Therion. This is the book that L. Ron Hubbard specifically highlights as related to his development of Dianetics and Scientology. The magic cults of the 8th and 9th and 10th and 11th, 12th centuries in the Middle East were fascinating. The only work that has anything to do with them is a trifle wild in sports, but it's a fascinating work written by Aleister Crowley, the late Aleister Crowley, my very good friend. It's very interesting reading to get a hold of a copy of a book, quite rare, but it can be obtained. The Master Therion by Aleister Crowley. He signs himself the Beast and the Mark of the Beast, 666. This is again from the Philadelphia doctorate courses that I mentioned to you, right? This gets into, again, this sort of Titan and its relationships to the Thetans, potentially a sort of grammatical relationship there. That's what this presentation is talking about. We're not going to go too much into all that stuff, but you guys can look it up yourself if you would like. Here's, again, the symbol of the 8-pointed cross of Scientology, because most people think, oh, Scientology must be Christian, right? They have the cross. No, they have the 8-pointed cross. This 8-pointed cross of Scientology comes from Rosicrucianism. That's why the Rosicrucians, who L. Ron Hubbard was a part of for a brief period, they actually sued him. They sued him when he created Scientology because they said that he was basically stealing some of the stuff that he agreed to not expose by becoming a part of the Order of the Rosicrucians. So interesting. Here's the Thetan and Scientology, yada, yada. In Scientology, operating Thetan is a notional spiritual status above clear. It is described as knowing and willing cause over life, thought, matter, energy, space, and time, MEST. According to religious scholar J. Gordon Melton, it's basically a variation of the Gnostic myth about souls falling into matter and the encumbrances that come with that, with the expectation that instead of divine intervention, there is alien intervention. The church teaches operating Thetan doctrine in 8 separate stages or levels, however. The church claims that there are actually 15 levels, and critics argue the church uses the missing levels to incentivize believers into giving more money to the church in order to be able to experience them once they are finally realized. Sometimes the church requires believers to retake their and therefore pay again for the previous courses in the meantime as they await the missing levels. Each course costs a considerable amount of money, often thousands of US dollars. I was from my research, again, I don't know if some of you guys may know better than I do, that by the time you get to the OT levels, you've already paid hundreds of thousands of dollars. So here's Xenu is the figure in the Church of Scientology. Advanced technology is a sacred and esoteric teaching. According to the technology, Xenu was an extraterrestrial ruler of the Galactic Confederacy who brought billions of his people to Earth in a DC-8-like spaceship. Yes, he claims, and this is where, again, he makes up his crap. He literally told his followers, he's like, yeah, they came in a DC-8, just like that one right there. Yeah, it looks the exact same thing, but it was a rocket. What? In commentary on the impact of the Xenu text, academic scholars have discussed and analyzed Hubbard's writings, their place within Scientology in relationship to science fiction, UFO, religions, Gnosticism, and creation myths. Several authors have pointed out structural similarities between the Xenu story and the mythology of Gnosticism. James A. Herrick, writing about the Xenu text and the making of the new spirituality, the eclipse of the Western religious traditions, notes that Hubbard's Gnostic teachings are evident in his account of human origins. And Hubbard, ideas first expressed in science fiction are seamlessly transferred into a worldwide religion with affinities to Gnosticism. Mary Farrell Bedernowski, writing in America's Alternative Religion, similarly states that the outline of the Xenu mythology is not totally unfamiliar to the historian acquainted with ancient Gnosticism, noting that many other religious traditions have the practice of reserving certain texts to high-level initiates. Nevertheless, she writes that Xenu's story arouses suspicion in the public about Scientology and adds fuel to the claims that Hubbard's system is the product of his creativity as a science fiction writer rather than a theologian. No shit. No shit. I don't know how anybody would need to know that. So here's talking a little bit about Yaldabaoth, the demiurge within the Gnostic paradigm. So this is again regarding Scientology and the Sea Organization. The original version, authored by Hubbard himself, created a furor among Scientologists because of several claims he made about horribly upset early participants. He would return from the grave and in the Messiah-like role stop an impeding apocalyptic alien invasion by the Galactic Confederacy, implying that the historical Jesus was a homosexual and a pedophile, apparently identifying himself with the Antichrist and warning that someone attempting this auditing level without being prepared may spontaneously combust. Okay, most of you guys are going to be familiar with the demiurge, so we're not going to go too deep into that. Here is OT level 8. Again, this is a part of Scientology. Some 80 odd million years ago, Earth time, it actually dates to 78 million years, but dates are superfluous. Plans were drawn by a group outside of the messed universe for the eventual takeover of a good portion of this universe, not a particularly large nor imaginative crew. Their exterior perspectives, however, gives them considerable advantage over the time-bound beings, again, us. No doubt you're familiar with the Revelation section of the Bible where various events are predicted. Also mentioned is a brief period of time in which an arch-enemy of Christ, referred to as the Antichrist, will reign and his opinions will have sway. All this makes for a very fantastic, entertaining reading, but there's little truth in it. The Antichrist represents the forces of Lucifer, literally the light bringer, Lucifer being a mythical representation of the forces of enlightenment in the Galactic Confederacy. My mission could be said to fulfill the biblical promise represented by this brief Antichrist period. During this period, there is a fleeting opportunity for the whole scenario to be effectively derailed, which would make it impossible for the mass Markabian landing. Okay, so again, now you can see, yes, exactly. Thank you, Theory Zone. Mass equals matter, energy, space, and time. So again, these entities are outside this. Buzz Lightyear. Yeah. It's wild stuff. It's wild stuff. I just want to say, everybody who's still here, smash that like, guys. I hope you guys appreciate this. It took me a while to put all this stuff together, I will admit. So this took a lot of effort, this stream, but I hope you guys are enjoying it. We haven't even got through halfway yet. We got way more to get through. So buckle in. But smash that like, and if you want to show some love, feel free to send in a super chat using the YouTube or Streamlabs, or you can also use the Dono chat. The rabbit hole led to wiki. The rabbit hole led to wiki. Throws in 2 Canadians, says keep reading. Will do, my brother. Thank you so much for the super chat. Again, anybody who would like to support, please send in a super chat using Streamlabs, the Dono link, or YouTube. With the exception of the original Buddhism, virtually all religions of any sequence or consequence on this planet are mono and pantheistic alike, have been instruments to spread the progress of this evolution of consciousness and bring about the eventual enslavement of mankind. As you know, Siddhartha Gautama never claimed to be anything more than a man. Okay, yada, yada, yada. For those of for those of whose Christian toes I may have stepped on, let me take the opportunity to disabuse you of some of the lovely myths. For instance, the historic Jesus was not nearly the sainted figure this man made out to be. In addition to being a lover of young boys and men, he was given to uncontrollable bursts of temper and hatred that belied the general message of love, understanding, and other typical macabre PR. Lord have mercy. Lord have mercy. Again, glory to God, glory to Jesus Christ, my Lord and Savior. It's disgusting how this man talked. It is a good joke that the Galactic Confederacy is associated with the serpent in the garden. Again, you can already see the Gnostic elements there, right? Gnosticism venerates the serpent to reorient the understanding of the fall as a blessing, not a curse, not a fall, but an ascending, as you will, to become like God. So anyways, you get it. You get it. We're going to keep moving on here. And so he believes that he is, again, here's Hymn of Asia, an Eastern poem by L. Ron Hubbard. Am I Maitreya? Maitreya is the last Buddha, the Buddha before the end of the world. If you see me dead, I will then live forever. I come to you in peace. I come to you as a teacher. I do not come as an officer of church or sect. I come to you as a man. I do not come as a god. I come to bring you wisdom. And so he often referred to himself as the Maitreya. Here's the Maitreya. The Lord of Maitreya is an advanced spiritual entity with high-ranking member. This is, again, the theosophical understanding, because Maitreya is also part of Buddhism. Reputed hidden spiritual hierarchy, the masters of ancient wisdom. According to theosophical doctrine, one of the hierarchy's functions is to oversee the evolution of humankind. In concert with this function, Maitreya is said to hold the office of the world teacher. Theosophical text posits that the purpose of this office is to facilitate a transfer of knowledge. So we can see the Maitreya stuff going on here. Planned deception, staging a new age messiah. This is where it starts to get into the potential of the use of Bluebeam, Project Bluebeam, a sort of fake alien invasion. We can see how intelligence agencies around the world are associated with this. Here's Ronald Reagan. Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bond. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. And yet I ask you, is not an alien force already among us? What could be more alien to the universal aspirations of our people than war and the threat of war? Okay. So anyways, we see here's John Travolta's relationship with Anton LaVey, the founder of the Church of Satan. Here's Tom Cruise and, just friends with notable aspiring figures like the Clintons and Weinstein, Harvey Weinstein. Here's Kanye West, again, highlighting. Can we say for a fact that this is explicitly related? I don't know. Potentially, certainly potentially. But this is the fire, the goddess form. And again, number 4. This is number 4 right here. You can kind of see number 4. That's what this is. That is Aleister Crowley dressed up doing that. So here is his son, and he has this really good quote, Nibs Hubbard, and I'm paraphrasing here, but he says, essentially, Scientology doesn't work the way L. Ron Hubbard says it works. It works the way he intended it for it to work. And so he's highlighting how Scientology absolutely works, according to his son, Nibs Hubbard. But it's not working in the way that L. Ron Hubbard says it works, meaning to liberate you, set you free, give you supernatural powers. But it works the way he intended for it to work, to make money, to entrap you, to enslave you, to make you totally dependent upon his system that venerates him, that what he believed makes him into a god and allows him to live forever.
Welcome. In 1972, you alleged in court papers that your father had lived a life characterized by severe mental illness and physical disease, consistent failure, and the use of false and fraudulent, oft-time criminal means to cover up these failures and to acquire wealth, fame, and power in order to destroy his perceived enemies. What made you draw those conclusions? What did you see that led you to that?
Because I lived it. 99% of what my father wrote and said about himself is totally untrue. And millions of people have taken this false data over a period of 30 some odd years and relied upon it and built a set of beliefs and built an organization, and basically those allegations that I made were true because throughout up to 1959 I was deeply involved in all of it.
What did you see specifically? I mean, give me an example. When you say criminal means, like, for example, what did you see?
Fraud and deception, the involvement with, in the early days in Phoenix, Arizona, for an example, in 1952, the involvement with organized crime.
Organized crime in what capacity?
The use of Scientology money, his own money, to finance drug importations into the country from Mexico and Colombia.
You saw these things?
Yes, I was involved with incidents.
You recorded any of this? You have papers to prove? Could you walk into court and prove any of these allegations?
I didn't think for years that I could. Most of it I thought was buried, but I think now, since I have been speaking out, that there has been evidence being brought forward proving those allegations.
Why did you leave the church? Because of these allegations, these things that you...
Well, I left the church for a whole wide variety of reasons. It isn't a very simple answer. I left because my wife wanted me to, and also because I wasn't making any money, because all the money flows, of course, to my father, always has. I was also tired of the fraud and the deception, plus his deep involvement in personal use of drugs on himself and others, black magic.
When you say black magic, what are you talking about? I mean, some of the things that I read in the stack of material, it sounds just absolutely unbelievable. What are you talking about when you say this?
Well, the funny thing is that the actual truth is about as far out as Scientology itself. Really, the basis of Scientology, which is rather hidden and covered over, is the occult, the deep involvement with satanic powers. And he felt that he was deeply involved with a British black magician called Aleister Crowley, and through putting himself in deep hypnotic trances and the use of drugs on himself, he wanted to become the most powerful being in the world.
Did you consider all of this a religion? Do
No.
you now?
No.
Why not?
Because it's a business. It always has been. I was one of the incorporators of one of the original church organizations, and we incorporated just because the AMA and the IRS were giving him a lot of problems in the early 50s.
What was your relationship like with your father? I mean, for a lot of people, they would say, well, maybe you're doing all this because you did not have a good relationship with your father, or maybe you're doing all this for the money. Why are you taking these stands?
Because I want to see the truth. And I can't expose my father without exposing myself. I mean, my life is pretty messed up and goofy anyway. In actual fact, who really belongs in this chair is Hubbard, my father. But why I'm doing it is let's lay all the facts out and let people decide.
I have a copy of a letter that supposedly came from your father, where he talks about the fact that your mother was an alcoholic and that she deserted both of you, and that you were not in any position to know about him or the church. Do you believe this is an authentic letter, first of all?
I really don't know, but I know that he has these facts all fouled up.
Such as?
Well, that he didn't know me very well. The fact is, from 1952 to 1959, I was very instrumental in and around the organization and the formation of it. I was director of training, taught many, better than 20 advanced clinical courses. I was chief instructor, traveled to England half a dozen times, lived with him. And so that...
So you're saying you're in a position to really know your father and the church and the workings of the church?
Oh, yes, very much so.
Why do you believe now that, or do you believe now that your father is alive?
I personally don't believe so,
Why
but
not?
I really don't know. That's just, as I said, a personal belief, but I think that if he is alive, he is certainly quite incompetent to handle his own affairs and is being grossly manipulated by the people around him.
People such as?
Well, in my petition, we named, I believe, a 22-year-old boy with about a 9th grade education named David Miscavige was one of them.
And this is a person who belongs to what is called now the Sea Organization, is that correct?
Yes, the Sea Org, and that is the it's sort of could be considered the SS arm.
Now, would you explain that? I mean, who are these people, and why have you labeled them that?
Because they're very much parallel a Hitlerite type organization.
And you realize that's very difficult for us to understand that. Here we are sitting in America today in the year 1983, and you're telling us that there's a group of young people who are like the SS.
Mm-hmm.
Why? I mean, how were they indoctrinated? Where were these young people? Where would they have gotten this concept from?
Gotten it from my father. They were raised in Scientology, and all they've known is Scientology and my father. And
were they isolated from the outside world altogether?
Not altogether, but pretty much kept in a very tight group. And of course, outside contact and outside communication has always been kept at a minimum over the years.
When you say SS, I think about harassment, intimidation, even death threats. Have you had any of this?
Oh, it's all of it. I've been the subject of the what's called the fair game doctrine, which has been in existence since the mid-50s. That simply says that anyone perceived as an enemy of L. Ron Hubbard or Scientology can be attacked, sued, lied to, deprived of property, and even destroyed without any discipline or retribution from the organization.
Someone has actually tried to kill you?
Yes, I believe so. About 3 or 4 times over the years.
But not now that you're out in public? You have not received any more threats?
No, not since I filed my petition. They've been rather quiet since then.
So in 1945, Hubbard became involved with Crowley's acolyte Jack Parsons. Parsons wrote to Crowley that Hubbard had described his angel as a beautiful winged woman with red hair, whom he calls the Empress, and who has guided him through his life and saved him many times. And the Crowleyite system adherents seek contact with their holy guardian angel. John Whiteside Parsons, usually known as Jack, first met Hubbard at a party in August 1945. Here, I'm going to share this link to you guys so you guys can read this if you want yourself sometime. There you go. Okay. Let's continue on here. Usually known as Jack, first met Hubbard at a party in August of 1945 when his terminal leave from the U.S. Navy began on December 6, 1945. Hubbard went straight to Parsons' house in Pasadena and took up residence in a trailer in the yard. Parsons was a young chemist who had helped to set up jet propulsion laboratories and was one of the innovators of solid fuel for rockets. Parsons was besotted with Crowley's sex magic and had recently become head of the Agape Lodge of the Church of Thelema in Los Angeles. The Agape Lodge was an aspect of the Ordo Templi Orientis, the small international group headed by Aleister Crowley. Parsons' girlfriend soon transferred her affections to Hubbard. With her, Hubbard and Parsons formed a business partnership, as a consequence of which Parsons lost most of his money to Hubbard. However, before Hubbard ran away with the loot, he and Parsons participated in magic rituals, which have received great attention among contemporary practitioners. Parsons and Hubbard together performed their own version of the secret 8th degree ritual of the Ordo Templi Orientis. The secret 8th degree, like the OT8, OTO8 in the Ordo Templi Orientis, in Scientology, the OT8. The ritual is called Concerning the Secret Marriages of Gods with Men and the quote magical masturbation, and is usually a homosexual ritual. The purpose of this ritual was to attract a woman willing to participate in the next stage of Hubbard and Parsons' sex magic. Hubbard and Parsons were attempting the most daring magical feat imaginable. They were trying to incarnate the Scarlet Woman described in the book of Revelation as Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth, drunken with the blood of saints and the blood of martyrs of Jesus. During the rituals, Parsons described Babylon as the mother of anarchy and abominations. The woman who believed had answered their call, Marjorie Cameron, joined with their sexual rituals in March 1946. Parsons used a recording machine to keep a record of his ceremonies. He also kept Crowley informed by letter. The correspondences still exist. Crowley wrote to his deputy in New York, "I get fairly frantic when I contemplate the idiocy of these loats." Crowley was being disingenuous. His own novel, The Moonchild, describes a ritual with a similar purpose. Further, the secret ninth degree order of ritual of the Ordo Templi Orientis contains the homunculus, in which the adept seeks to create a human embodiment of one of the energies of nature, a god or goddess. The fact that Hubbard and Parsons were committing sacrilege in Crowley's terms, Crowley respelled Babylon as he respelled magic. His magic was entirely dedicated to Babalon, the Scarlet Woman. Crowley believed himself if the servant of the slave of Babylon, the Antichrist, styling himself the Beast 666. Hubbard and Parsons' attempts did not end with the conception of a human child. However, just as Crowley said, gods are but names for the forces of nature themselves, so it might be speculated that Hubbard embodied Babylon not in the human form, but through his organization. And I definitely do believe that. I believe Scientology is the outgrowth of all his magical practices. I mean, that's basically my claim for today's stream, and I really do believe that to be the case. Hubbard's interest in the occult was kindled long before he met Parsons. It dates back at least to his membership of the ancient and mystical order Rosicrucis. Having stolen Parsons' girl and his money, Hubbard carried on with magical practices of his own devising. Scientology attempted to reclaim documents which recorded these practices in its case against former Hubbard archivist Gerald Armstrong. Some $280,000 was paid to publishers Ralston Pilot to prevent publication of Omar Garrison's authorized biography of Hubbard. However, Garrison retained copies of thousands of Hubbard documents and showed me one which had been referred to as among the Armstrong trial. The blood ritual is an invocation of the Egyptian goddess Hathor he performed by Hubbard during the late 1940s. As the name suggests, the ritual involved the use of blood. Hubbard mingled his own blood with that of his then wife, the girlfriend he had stolen from Parsons, and with whom Hubbard contracted a bigamous marriage. In a 1952 Scientology lecture, Hubbard referred to Aleister Crowley as my very good friend. In fact, the two black magicians never met, and Crowley expressed a very low opinion of the man who he saw had tricked in his disciple Jack Parsons. Even so, Hubbard had a very positive regard for Crowley, calling his work fascinating.
What depths can man fall to? And what is he anyway? And I began to ask this question, what is man? And I found, oddly enough, that nobody could tell me what man was. What did he consist of? Where was he going? What was he doing? I became very fascinated with this particular line of research, and I made it my life's work.
Did you read widely of philosophy?
Yes, but the philosopher, of course, has spent most of his working years in his ivory towers, and he was pretty insulated from life. To really know life, you've got to be part of life. You must get down and look. You must get into the nooks and crannies of existence. You have to rub elbows with all kinds and types of men before you can finally establish what he is.
And you, in fact, did this?
Yes, I've slept with bandits in Mongolia, and I've hunted with pygmies in the Philippines. As a matter of fact, I've studied 21 different primitive races, including the white race. And my conclusions were that man, regardless of his state of culture and so forth, was essentially the same, that he was composed of, he was a spiritual being. And he was a spiritual being that was pulled down to the material, the fleshly interests, to an interplay in life that was, in fact, too great for him to confront. And I concluded finally that he needed a hand.
Now, what was the first step in the formulation of Scientology? What was the first piece of knowledge that you uncovered?
Well, that is an interesting question, because when I first entered a university, I took science, and I learned the rules of logic and the scientific approach. These things, by the way, are not generally known to philosophers. And my first effort was to find a common denominator to all men. And I had seen him in his more primitive states, and I'd seen him in his highly cultured states. And I said, somewhere one can isolate a common denominator that embraces all men. And perhaps from that we can unlock this riddle.
You mentioned just now that you discovered for yourself that man was a spirit. Are you here comparing Scientology with a religion, any religion in fact, that also sees man as a spirit?
Well, man has conceived man to be a spirit for many more years than he has conceived man to be an animal or a materialistic thing. We have a 2,000-year history of man as a spirit, whereas we only have less than a century of considering simply mud. And therefore, my study is more traditional than most philosophies. Now, when you get most modern renditions and so forth, but man poses a great many problems, and he is so varied from culture to culture, from type to type, race to race, that when I discovered the common denominator of existence and so forth, I was away, and I could go forward from that point. And I did discover that.
Can you now take us forward from this point and tell us where you went when you made that first discovery of yours?
Well, I discovered that the common denominator of existence was survive. Whatever else man was trying to do, whether he was cultured or primitive and so on, he was attempting to survive. And then one had to move forward from this point to find out what methods he used to survive, how he adapted himself.
You guys see how he's just a captivating, and not that I find him captivating, but if you weren't in the know, you would just sit and listen to him talk and talk and talk. Here's a question. When did Dianetics really begin?
The same word.
Now, when was this book published?
1950, May the 9th, 1950.
And is that as old as Scientology or Scientology Dianetics is?
Yes, yes. Well, actually, no. Researches on this really started in university in 1930, 31, and moved on.
See, now he's claiming that he's been researching and doing this stuff for years and years. It's almost 20 years he's been researching before he wrote about it.
For the first major discovery that life, all forms of life behaved according to the principle of survival and so forth, was made in 1938. And after the war, after some years of study, I was able to move it up into a publishable form. But I was actually known for many years for working in this particular field, but I never wrote anything about it.
Dude's an absolute lie. I mean, if he's talking about magic and looking into magic, then yes, that's the case, right? But he's certainly no engineer, mathematician, philosopher, studier of cultures and Absolutely, the dude's a liar. He just lies about everything.
Never published anything, never told anybody about it to amount to anything. And when I did, it was like I started an avalanche.
Now, if someone wants to get into Scientology, they read your books, as you said, but where do they go from there?
They would find the nearest organization, and they would go there, and they would get training, or as we call it, processing, and so on.
Can you describe processing?
Processing is the principle of making an individual look at his own existence and to improve his ability to confront what he is and where he is.
To make him look at his own existence.
That's right.
And confront where he is and what he is.
That's right.
How?
Yeah, so that you can confront Xenu and the Galactic Confederacy. Just want to remind people to smash that like. And if you want to show some appreciation or love, feel free to send in a super chat using YouTube or the Streamlabs link, or as Moldy Apple has done, use the Dono chat link. I'd be greatly appreciative. I just want to play a little bit more of L. Ron Hubbard so you guys can get a feel for what he was like and how slimy that guy was. I mean, he's like the most slimy character you can imagine.
How is this brought about?
You just ask the person to look, actually. Of course, you're asking a very, very technical question. An auditor has to be able to get his questions answered, and the individual who's being processed finally has to answer the question. The question is asked until it is totally answered and the person is totally aware that he has answered it.
Is this a form of psychoanalysis?
No, psychoanalysis, they lay back. Don't associate Scientology with such people. That's terrible. That's bad manners, you know? I mean, that business about sex and all that sort of thing.
Meanwhile, again, multiple authors have wrote about how he's basically adopting psychoanalytic, hypnotic, occult aspects and then infusing them into Dianetics and Scientology. So he tells people, oh my gosh, don't go to a psychologist or a psychiatrist. All that stuff is quack. It'll just make you crazier. Meanwhile, that's exactly what he's using and creating in his own system.
These people, you know, in psychoanalysis, they worked on somebody for a year just to find out if they could help him, and then they charged him about 9,000 quid for having not helped him and so forth. But that's psychotherapy. That's for the neurotic or the person who is insane or something like that. That has nothing to do with Scientology. Scientology is for an able guy like you or like me, able to function in life, able to make his own way, does his work and so forth. All right, that's the man that should be helped. That's the man you should help out, because that fellow is having a hard time. And he's got his problems. Now, if you put him in a position where his intelligence is up to handling his problems, where his ability to confront life is increased, you'll find out that he is better. He can better his environment. He can take care of his family better. He can do his job better. He can live better, and so forth. And that's all we want in Scientology. The insane and so forth, somebody else can have them. They've already failed.
But you did say that people coming into Scientology should have this desire to help.
Oh, yes.
Cannot Scientology go out of its way to help these people who are perhaps not completely
yes,
sane?
you can do. Scientology could do things like that. When you know the basics of human existence and so forth, you could apply them in almost any sphere. For instance, a great many people think that Scientology does medical treatment and so forth, simply because people who are processed and so on tend to get well and recover from certain illnesses. That's a secondary action. A person who is able, of course, is more able physically also. And however, when a person turns up who is ill and so forth, we just send him to the doctor. We're not interested in treating human illness.
You said it could help certain illnesses, though. What kind of illnesses?
Oh, it is not. It is not, in actual fact, medical treatment. So to say what illnesses it helps and so forth would be, well, if a person has psychosomatic illnesses and that sort of thing, and they tend to fall away as he increases his ability. But this is no treatment of those illnesses.
Now, if this is correct, why don't the medical profession use Scientology?
They do. They do in many parts of the world. As a matter of fact, a doctor in Michigan the other day told somebody that Dianetics was totally owned by the medical profession now and didn't belong to Hubbard anymore.
Scientology has attracted a lot of publicity in the press, and the press has said that it tends to be something of a racket to make money for those people who are running it.
No, that of course, most press is motivated by vested interests, as anyone knows, and they merely say what they're told to say. And when you realize that the medical psychiatric world have an investment which brings a return of 2 to 3 billion pounds per annum over the world, they try to protect that. And that is the source of criticism of Scientology. These
Yeah, I don't know if you guys can see this bottom part, but it says, to this day, Scientology still claims that Big Pharma is behind all criticism of Scientology's bad press, lawsuits, etc. Maximus says he literally looks possessed with demons. He is. And I want to end it. I want to ask, right through here, is man basically good? And then it goes into, does man help himself with Scientology, and is auditing a form of hypnotism? Are drugs used in auditing? So we're going to listen to these next few questions.
man can be bettered spiritually.
Do you think that man is basically good?
Man is basically good, yes. His experiences have led him into evil, and he very often solves his problems from his own point of view only. And when he solves a problem from his own point of view, of course, he gets other points of view into trouble. What is good for a duck hunter is not good for the duck.
Do I understand from this then that through Scientology processing, you can show man where he's going wrong and help him in this way? In other words, he helps himself.
He helps himself. We do not say, you must do this, you must do that, and so forth. We show him. We show him only how to confront his existence, how to handle his immediate problems. And as he progresses up the line toward a greater spiritual freedom, he learns that there are wrong ways to go about things and right ways to go about things. And he gradually drops away the shortcuts to fortune, the shortcuts to fulfillment of his desires, and so on, that we normally associate with evil practices. And he becomes an honest man.
You said that through Scientology processing, a person was able to look at the problems, to confront the problems that they were facing in their everyday life. Is this some form of hypnotism?
Oh, no. That's very funny. Man is asleep. He is hypnotized. He is made to fixate on certain things, you see, and the process that you normally know as brainwashing and that sort of thing is hypnotizing man. It's forcing him into certain values. It's crowding him by various duress. And
I just want to highlight again the theme that I pointed out is that whatever he's doing, he flips it, right? So Scientology and auditing and all these different things, they're not hypnotizing man. They're not brainwashing him. The world is doing that. The Thetans are doing that, right? Man is already deluded. And so what he's doing, he's unprogramming him. Meanwhile, it's doing the exact opposite. The dude is a perpetual liar. I don't think he can actually say something truthful. The dude is an habitual liar.
Into these values. And he eventually becomes a person who has no awareness. Now, in Scientology, reverse the process and you make him wake up. And he gradually gets more and more alert. And he's more and more wide awake, and his IQ rises higher and higher, and he is more and more capable of knowing what's going on about him. It's quite the reverse. Any ideology that wants to hypnotize man into believing, well, take communism, for instance, want to hypnotize man into believing he's this or that or the other thing, and so forth. It comes a terrible cropper with Scientology, because such a man becomes unbrainwashed, you might say. He becomes unhypnotized. And that was the first thing, one of the first things I discovered about processing. It was actually the basic discovery of processing, that man was asleep and he had to wake up. And then I went about trying to find out ways and means of how to make him do this, and that became processing.
Do you use drug?
Yeah, Theoria Zone says his writing's well done. He does weave elements well together and is a good wordsmith and storyteller. And that's where people that have left Scientology and that new L. Ron Hubbard, they say, yeah, he's a bullshitter, no doubt about that. But the thing that he does is he tells stories. And that's what he does with his lives. He's constantly telling you a story. He's constantly creating a network of associations for you to buy into. And again, and focus on these mental images, these mental landscapes of the galactic confederacy and who you're going to be and your supernatural abilities and your, as you audit these engrams and your reactive mind, your IQ is going to get better and better and better. You're going to make more money. You're going to be, the person that you've always wanted to be. And so it's his storytelling. Everything is a story. His magic is the storytelling. And it's his audacity that he is willing to just outright lie about everything. That's what makes him such a charismatic and powerful figure, if you will, as a cult leader.
Drugs in any way?
No, never. Once in a while, Scientologists will take vitamins or something like that to, well, just like anybody else does, but otherwise no drugs.
Is there any equipment used in this processing?
Yes, we have a meter, one of the most misunderstood objects that anybody had anything to do with. And a meter simply shows where an individual is aberrated. And the lie detector, of course, is not a lie detector. It doesn't detect lies. It only detects disagreements. You ask a fellow, did you murder the girl? And he disagrees with murdering the girl. And of course, he gets the reaction on the lie detector, and they take him out to the electric chair and electrocute him. Lie detectors are no good. But it does show that he is upset about the idea of murdering a girl. Do you follow? Now, if you ask him why he was upset about this particular idea, you might find some relative who had been murdered that he had completely forgotten about. And he illuminates this sector of his life, and it clears.
How would you describe the mental state of a patient during processing?
Well, I've never processed a patient, so I wouldn't know, you see, because patients are people who are sick and in mental institutions and that sort of thing and all the like. Worked with such people just in the normal experience of existence. This has nothing to do with Scientology. But how is he? He's wide awake, bright alert, quite interested, and he is examining things which he had never examined before, and he becomes quite happy about it.
Doesn't he get introverted looking into his unconscious mind?
Yes, but he introverts in order to extrovert. In other words, he is actually handling the things which cause him to be introverted. And when he has handled those things, he extroverts.
You've mentioned a lot about freedom of the mind, Mr. Hubbard, but often this can be mistaken for a form of anarchy, where the person is under no discipline whatsoever.
Well, you find out that man has to be put under discipline to the degree that he is aberrated. And man being basically good, the more you make him free, why, the better his behavior is. And we have, I don't know how many case histories that prove this.
You mentioned aberrated. What does that mean?
Aberrated is a crooked line. That's the definition of the word. It comes from light traveling in a crooked line. And man's thinking is very often in a crooked line. So he gets from point A to B through so many different points that he never does arrive at B. And that is called aberration.
Which is exactly what he's doing with Scientology.